Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Nile Gerry Tea Podcast. Podcast where we talk about ethics in magic, specifically competitive magic, and all the fun little tidbits that come with that. I am your host, Nile Joan Rivers. Joined with me, as always, Jerry Thompson. Jerry, how you doing?
I am alive.
You know, I was in Vegas this last weekend, doing a lot of stuff. Met a homie of yours in Vegas for the first time. One Patrick Chapin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
that's my guy.
Yeah. I told him, I was like, we have a mutual friend. And he was like, who? And I said, Jerry Thompson. And then he held his hand to his heart and he was like, oh, I love Jerry. I love Jerry so much. And I was like, me too. Jerry's awesome. Love Jerry. Adore Jerry. And yeah, just had a nice little talk about how big of fans we both are of one Gerry Tea.
Hell yeah. Did you ask him why he ever took me under his wing or what he saw in me? You should have.
No, I wasn't. To be honest with you, I'd been interviewing people all weekend long and I was not I was off the clock at that point, you know?
No, but that's a for you thing, you know? That's not a...
Sure. Listen, next time I talk to him, I will. Maybe there'll be a week where you're busy and I'll hit up old Patrick and I'll say, hey, Patrick, do you want to come on this podcast in Jerry's stead? And I can ask you a bunch of questions and then I'll get to the bottom of it.
That'd be wild.
Yeah.
I'm busy, but I'm never that busy. You know?
We'll see. You say that. We'll see. But yeah.
Where's the tea going to come from if I'm not here?
From Patrick Chapin. That's where, because he's going to be your fill-in.
We
talked about the podcast. He might listen. He might hear this. Patrick, if you're listening, you're the alternate for Jerry. Should Jerry ever not be able to fulfill his duties, you're Vice Jerry.
I mean, that man should do more video podcasts. He'd be really good at it. But
I think so. He's got charisma. That's evident.
Yeah, he's got receivables. He's good.
Sure. But yeah, I thought that was fun. Vegas was, well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I fucking hate Vegas. I think Vegas is a miserable city.
I do too. I stayed home.
Yeah. I have a lot of feelings about MagicCons in general. And to be fair, I do think a lot of my feelings about MagicCons stem from the fact that I always end up working MagicCons. So they're always like work trips. And this one is the most I've ever worked, which is saying a lot because I always work a lot. This one I was working on this passion project that I can't really talk about too much yet. But it's something very near and dear to my heart. And I really overworked myself like crazy. And it was 110 degrees every day. It was miserable. It was a miserable time. But something I will say about this project is it did find me in a testing house doing some work with a testing team. And this was my first direct exposure to testing teams. And we had recently talked about doing an episode on testing teams. We put up a little poll on Spotify. We asked the Pause Warriors to let us know if they wanted to hear about it. And overwhelmingly, people wanted a testing teams episode. So congratulations, everybody. That's what you're getting today. Pause Warriors, go ahead and pause the video or the audio. Go down into the comments and say, thank you for the testing team episode. We love that you all appreciate and hear us when we comment. All right, go ahead and make that comment, Pause Warriors. Welcome back, Pause Warriors. Thank you for your contributions. We love you.
Don't thank us yet. What if it's not good?
No, they have to think because we gave it all. First of all, it's gonna be good, Jerry.
It is gonna be good. It's gonna be something. I feel like a lot of folks are going to think it is good, except for maybe the people who are already involved in testing teams.
Oh, we'll see.
We will see. But what can you tell us about your house experience? How long were you there?
So the testing team part of it, I was only in a testing house for 1 day of Vegas.
Okay.
So no, I didn't get the full testing team experience by any stretch of the imagination. And to be fair, I was also there for the last day of the testing team shindig. So a lot of the time I was there, they were doing their limited meeting.
Yeah.
Which takes forever, but seems pretty cool. here's my big takeaways from what I observed of testing houses. And this, I think, is not going to be a surprise to many or any of you. And not only is this true of an observation I made at the testing house I was at, it's also true of observations my friends have made at other testing houses. Magic players got to learn how to clean better. Magic players,
you mean at all?
Yeah, like I get it. You're there to like play Magic, but like you got to strike a little bit of a balance, I think, you know, like, and to be fair, I think I was at what sounds like one of the cleaner testing houses. Like it wasn't
probably.
I would not describe it as like disgusting or anything. It was just like you guys could have thrown away these water bottles. You know, like you could have put this in recycling.
Stuff strewn everywhere, right? It's not like, I don't know, there's 4-day-old pizza like sitting out or anything, but
it's just like we couldn't have put up these groceries, you know? We went to all the trouble to put all these empty water bottles together, but just like on the counter, you know, like we could have gone one step further. I don't think the PT results would have really suffered.
Maybe there were 7 in the draft queue, you know?
Sure,
that 8th person just had to drop what they were doing.
Yeah. You got to get in there. You got to get in there. Anyways, testing teams, if you are looking to fly someone out and house them and pay them for their time, I will be your testing housemaid. I can fix you. I can change you. I can make it a better experience for all of you. Hit me up. You know where to find me.
They could not pay me enough money to do what you just offered.
They could for me. I'd be very interested. It's like, you know, those people who would like that lady scientist who lived among the dolphins to study them.
Sure.
That's kind of, or like scientists who like live among gorillas, you know, to study them. That's kind of how I feel. That's kind of how whenever I'm in the testing house, I'm like, I'm an observer. I'm a scientific observer. I'm just watching what they do. It's very fascinating. I'm taking little notes, recording little videos.
They're easily startled.
I gotta be really quiet so they don't get startled. I gotta like quietly talk into my like field recorder, like observed them talking about limited for some time, you know, stuff like that.
They spent 45 minutes on an uncommon.
Yes. But yeah, that was my big takeaway is messy houses.
Shocker. Completely shocked. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Now, this team did do something really smart, I think, which is they had multiple houses booked that were like next to each other. And so they had one house that was like their like we're playing Magic house. And then they had like their living house. And the living house was in much better shape than the playing Magic house.
Okay.
And then again, the playing Magic house wasn't abysmal, but it was like, come on.
I gotta imagine there were just booster pack wrappers, like not like piles of them, but just like, oh, I dropped one on the ground. And
now there's a decent number of them, a bunch of like Diet Cokes, a bunch of water bottles, a bunch of, you know.
Not even Coke Zero? Come on, get your shit together.
I know. I could fix them. Let me do the grocery orders. Let me clean the house. Let me study you and document you and pay me money. I'll do it. But yeah, so that's like the bulk of my testing house experience. Now I've been on testing teams for sure for like small scale tournaments. I've never been part of a testing house, never been on the pro tour, never been in any event bigger than an RC. So Jerry, as someone who's been to all these things and more, what are some of your thoughts on testing teams?
Well, in my mind, a team is something that should be functioning kind of like an individual unit. And unfortunately, that does not really seem to be the case in Magic or I guess, you know, many competitive card games out there, mostly because you are competing as individuals, right? But I don't know, I think about like a baseball team or something, and that team is going to benefit long-term if someone is kind of slacking a little bit, someone else can maybe jump in, provide some advice. Like everyone benefits when the team is just better. And a lot of that is because they're like winning and losing together, right? But I do think for Magic, it's just like if we have a person who is maybe not very good at limited and you help that person get better at limited, well, it makes your team better because you have one more person who is presumably going to be doing a little bit better in the tournaments and everything. And that can lead to like easier sponsorships and whatnot and stuff like that. But maybe at some point, then they're able to teach you something, or maybe because they have to focus on limited less because they kind of get it, they're able to focus on constructed and then provide a benefit to you. I don't know. It seems like kind of a no-brainer to me, at least if you are thinking about it long term and you're operating in that sense. But I do think that, Magic is a fickle thing, and feel like probably like half the people for any individual pro tour on a team are probably only queued for the one thing, and then are going to be right back to playing RCQs. So I do think that Magic does sort of incentivize you to focus on yourself and your immediate results and whatnot, but certainly not every team is like that either. I think, maybe the team that you stayed with has a bunch of people who are like perennially queued or whatever. I don't know if that changes what the focus seemed like or anything, if you got any sort of gist on that. But
there was clearly a sort of, I don't even really want to call it a divide because that feels like too strong of language, but there's clearly a distinction between what I would call like the veteran pros of that testing team. People have been doing this for decades, have a lot of pro tours under their belts, and the like new generation pros of that testing team who were very much newer to it. Maybe their first or second, within like a few of their first pro tour, you could really feel that kind of like distinction. And not even in a way of like I don't think, like from what I observed of the limited meeting, it didn't really feel like if one of the newer pros said something about a card, the older pros were going to be like, oh, no, you're wrong, kid. It's just more of like I think there are these like natural dynamics at play where the newer pros, I think, kind of like look up to these like veterans and, have this sort of innate, like, I used to watch you, like I like aspired to be like you. And now I'm here testing with you. And also, I think the newer pros have this feeling of like having more to prove sort of thing. Whereas the older pros, I think, are just like way more, it's just kind of a thing of like, how like older Magic pros, I think, are more likely to take like the most consistently correct choice. Whereas I feel like newer players, I think the best way I can articulate this is I did a lot of interviewing of pros over the weekend. And a question that I asked everybody was, is it a good idea to fly out to an event to try and LCQ into it? And there was this really interesting thing that sort of came from that I wasn't expecting, where
the old people said no.
Yes, basically every single old pro was like, no. Like, I mean, if you're going to go just to have fun with your friends or whatever, that's like fine. But like, as far as like EV goes, that's just like a bad idea. Like, don't do that. And then there was one new pro I asked who was like, I would rather LCQ than RCQ. Because then I don't have to like spend any of my weekends trying to queue. I can just show up to the event and qualify. And I was like, that's crazy. Like it's just there's such a clear divide between this like much older concept. It was like, it felt so much more like disciplined of like, no, I'm just going to do the thing that makes the most sense and like, has the best like return on investment value wise for me, versus people being like, why the fuck not? I'm going to qualify anyway. Like it was really interesting. It was very cool to hear that distinction. But, I kind of felt that from them just in the house.
Yeah. I drove to a pro tour in New Orleans from a little bit north of Minneapolis by myself, and the radio in my car did not work.
Jesus.
And this is in the era of MapQuest too. So that added another layer. But I was not qualified, but they did have last chance qualifiers. And this was the first pro tour after like 2 or 3 that I was not playing, and I was hungry, and I lost, I think playing for top 8 maybe, or like the round before. And then you had to win another round. It was top 4 qualify. And then I was just at the event all weekend with nothing to do. And I was like, there are so many reasons why I'm never doing this again.
Yeah, totally.
But it seemed like a great idea at the time. I wanted it so bad, like I totally understand the mindset of where they're coming from.
Well, it's exciting and a little intoxicating, right? To be like, I'll get there, I'll qualify, I'll have this like legendary run. And sometimes you do, right? I mean, Jesse Robkin LCQs into the Charlotte RC, wins the whole thing. That's a legendary run. That's incredible. That's
sick.
I
would say that not many people are capable of doing that, though.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
No, I super agree. But I get why like that is alluring, right? Because part of what is like sick about Jesse's Charlotte run is the fact that she LCQ'd into it. Like,
for sure.
That is part of it, is that it just adds like 5 wins to how you talk about the weekend, you know, and you end up talking about it as like, she won like 22 matches over the weekend. And that's crazy, you know, and that just sounds cooler than she won 17 matches. I don't know.
Well, she also had to play an extra day too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It sucks. You shouldn't do it. It sucks.
Well, I'm just saying it makes it more impressive that she was able to stay at the height of her powers over the course of the weekend.
Yeah. You know? It's the endurance and the fatigue of it all. It's incredible. And you know, I think we are like actually feeding into the problem right now because of the way that we are talking about it. You know, like we are sitting here being like, that's sick as fuck. That's so cool that she did that. And that's what people hear. And they're like, I want to be sick as fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it is ill-advised, but it is really cool if you do it.
There were like 120 people in my LCQ. It was not sick as fuck for the 120 of us who did not qualify for it.
Yeah, that's for sure. For sure.
I certainly take solace in the fact that I would have gotten absolutely destroyed in the Pro Tour. So there is that aspect as well. But at least
that's good.
At least I could have been like, oh, you know, this was not a waste of my time or whatever. But instead, no, it was a giant waste of my time.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Magic teams are clearly not the same as sports teams, and Magic does have that weird amount of I don't know, like chaoticness to it where you don't know if you're going to be qualified for the long term or whatever. But I just don't understand. I mean, I do understand, but I don't understand why people continually make the choice to just join this group of people in the hopes of benefiting themselves. Like, I feel like we need a different word for that. Like, that's not a team. That's like we're an information sharing collective. And that is it.
Yeah. It's really not so team like, you know, because like, I mean, you are information sharing and a lot of you are going to end up on similar decks, but that is less of like we're a team, so we're playing the same deck. And that is more of just a product of you being an information sharing collective, where if the information you're all sharing and aggregating together is Steel Cutter is the best deck or Mono Red's the best deck, it's reasonable that most, if not all of you, are going to end up on that deck, right? Like,
yeah.
It is basically you are all sharing information and then you're all kind of coming to your own conclusions about the information. But because of the fact that you're all such high level players, you're going to come to similar conclusions.
Yeah. And I don't know, to speak to the team aspect of it, I've been in testing houses where I disliked half the people there, you know? And it's just like, I guess I'm doing this for some reason. I don't really know why, you know? But yeah, then there are also instances where like someone on the team uses what they learned from the team to play a deck that beats the team deck. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, that's so wild.
Well, let's briefly mention a team who always gets mentioned when we talk about teams in any capacity, and who I think is sort of an anomaly, structurally speaking, as far as Magic testing teams go. And that is, of course, Sanctum of All.
Sanctum is the exception.
Sanctum's the exception.
From what I've heard, at least.
So I think there's a few interesting reasons. So if anyone is unaware of Sanctum of All is, relatively speaking, a pretty new Magic team, right? Like, when was Sanctum founded? Do you have any idea?
I can find when they started their Twitter account.
Perfect. Uh-oh. Did my camera die? Did it overheat? Where'd we go? Hold on. I'll be
night.
No, we're not night.
November 2021.
November 2021. So yeah. That is 4 years ago.
Yep.
That's very recent, right? Like as far as testing teams go.
Oh yeah. Especially a lot of them be like a main team.
Oh yeah. To be like a seen, noticed, like, you know, known entity. So Sanctum of All testing team, 4 years old, very new. Their whole thing is they are a team that was sort of formed with the intention of being like for marginalized people of any variety, really. I think these days Sanctum is kind of like, that is definitely still the backbone of what they are, but they're definitely not like excluding people on those grounds. You know, like our good friend Lou, who was in one of the early episodes of this very podcast, tested with Sanctum for this Pro Tour. And Lou is a, you know, cishet dude. You know, like there's nothing really marginalized about our friend Lewis, but he is a hashtag ally in basically every way that he can be, and just a good guy. So I'm not surprised that they would work with him, but it's just, you know, to clarify that they are not like excluding people on these bases. But I think because Sanctum has this sort of like ethos to it, you know, where it's like, we are here for these people, and we are here for like marginalized people in the space, and we are here to like enhance representation in the space and all this stuff. I think that gives them a much stronger like team unity than what you get from teams that are way more established and have like much bigger names, you know, like veterans, like titans of competitive Magic. Because on those teams, the vibe feels very much more like, we are a group of like 16 mercenaries, basically, who have all decided to like share information. But when it comes down to it, like we are a team more or less until like the Pro Tour starts. And then it's kind of like we're all on our own. And Sanctum is much more like, we all have a common goal. And it is not just get as many of our people as high up in this tournament as we can so that we get like good sponsorships and stuff. It is, we want to get as many of our people as high up in this tournament as we can so that we can like plant our flag on Magic. And that's cool. And that, like, you know, to me, very clearly, like, it makes a lot of sense why Sanctum would have a stronger like team vibe than these other teams.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But like, what is the cohesion on, you know, team handshake or whatever, you know? It's like,
it's not really.
Mostly dudes who play Magic good, you know. It's what is the thing that would maybe make someone want to help someone else on that team? And it's just like, well, anytime I devote to helping you takes away from time that I need to like draft for the 50th time or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, there's just not like a common goal. Yeah, it feels very disjointed for sure. Now, do you think that disjointed feeling is a major detriment to these teams?
I do, for sure. I mean, maybe not as much in the short term, especially if your roster is always changing, but especially for the teams who have been around for a while, even if we're talking about for, you know, 4 years, kind of like the new era of Magic, you know, stuff like Handshake is a relatively new team as well, but they have a lot of top players or whatever. And presumably they plan to be around for a while. It's like, well, I don't know, maybe ensure that the players who are on your team who you think are beneficial to have around stay qualified, you know? And I feel like that there's just so many things that you can do to help someone, to just like check in on them. Like, hey, I know that I have a plan I like for the Is It Mirror or whatever, but I know that you were spending a lot of time doing our limited prep and stuff. Is there anything that I can answer for you or whatever? Do you have any questions as to like why this card is there, why we're sideboarding this way in this matchup? Like, that sort of stuff does not take long, but Instead, that person would have to take it on themselves to ask those questions. And it might be a thing that they don't even know to ask about, where it's like, oh, maybe you have this card in your sideboard for a matchup that people would not assume is the case. And it's like, I'm not telling you, I'm just giving you the deck list and you have to like figure this stuff out on your own or whatever. It's all kind of weird. And then there is also that, boys club type of thing in a lot of these places where if I ask you a question that demonstrates that I don't know something, you're just going to make fun of me. And so people are totally just disincentivized from doing that. It sucks.
Well, and especially with the like sort of old school, new school distinction that we already talked about. So inversely, I guess, do you think it is a strength of Sanctum of All to have this stronger team dynamic?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've already seen them do very, very well, but I think in the next 2 to 5 years or whatever, assuming things stay relatively the same, and I don't know why they would change, but just throwing in that caveat there is that they are going to be one of the best teams, if not the best team, because they're all going to continually be working at it and trying to help each other improve. And that's going to happen. And they are just going to lap everyone else because everyone else is mostly working on their own, but sharing information as a group. And that's it.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Very, very excited to see what sort of unfolds with Sanctum in the coming years. What about there's all these other teams who aren't Sanctum, who don't have internal temp too high. I see what's happening. We'll fix the camera later. Don't worry about it. So what about all these teams who aren't Sanctum? If they want to increase their cohesion, if they want to start to feel like more of a team, what can they do?
Start giving a shit about your teammates. Have some empathy. I don't know. Like I just saw on every single team that I was on that nobody checked in on anyone else. It didn't matter how close the relationships were or not, but like no one was like, oh, hey, does anyone have any questions? Anything I can help you with? Like, does anyone feel uncomfortable in a matchup? Like I can help play the other side of it or whatever, like literally nobody did that. And I think that is just a fine place to start, is to just check in with people, see how they're doing, how they're feeling, and if there's anything that they need help on. And that can be in terms of prepping for the tournament that you're prepping for, or in a longer term sense, it could just be about playing Magic in general, like the whole team thing does not have to only happen like 2 weeks before the Pro Tour.
Yeah, I guess that's probably like one of the big distinctions for Sanctum, right? Is they are committed to this same goal all the time.
Yeah.
Like inside and outside of the Pro Tour, and they work together inside and outside of the Pro Tour. And they are this like unit in a way that other teams aren't. Like I feel like other teams will have like a handful of kind of like key players who you always see, and then a roster that like really rotates.
Yep.
And I mean, in the testing house I was at, there were a bunch of people that were like, oh yeah, this is my first time testing with this team. And it very much had the vibe of like, am probably the last time that I'm testing with this team. And not out of like I'm not good enough or anything, but just out of like the roster changes. They bring, they've decided that having a rotating roster is more valuable than like having this set established team or whatever. And that is kind of like where they're putting their points. But I mean, it clearly is doing some good for Sanctum to have this like established thing.
I believe it. I mean, you would think that if someone gets added to a team, either because you think that they have some sort of skill that is possibly transferable or will help you or whatever, or if it's just a nepotism invite or clout or whatever, you would think that regardless, like you would want that person to be qualified again. Otherwise, you just had this like one weird, probably awkward person around because they didn't know exactly like the lay of the land for this one pro tour, and then they're just not there for the rest of it. It's just like, well, they're going to be less awkward the next time, and you thought that there was reason enough to add them the first time. Why would you not want to help make sure that they qualify again, even if it's outside of the pro tour window, you know?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, because also with Sanctum, not only is Sanctum the team new as far as testing teams are concerned, but the players of Sanctum are all relatively new. You know, like Sanctum doesn't really have any members who are like, I've been playing competitively for 25 years.
Yeah.
Or anything like that, right? Like they are all basically like the new generation of Magic pros. But also, Sanctum is kind of like the number one source of weird new brews, competitively speaking. You know, like they very much are the like innovators and people who like try new things. And, you know, they don't always do that. They're not like, I wouldn't call it like a gimmick of Sanctum where it's like, oh, well, Sanctum's going to bring a weird deck. But they are going to explore weird decks. And if they really believe in it, they will play it. And sometimes they will dominate with it.
Yep.
And that's really cool. And I don't know. I wonder if these other teams would benefit from new players being more baked into their structure, where for Sanctum, it's just their whole foundation, right? Like it's everything. It's because that's everything they have. But for the other teams, I mean, kind of like you said, it almost feels like there's not a ton of thought into who is getting added, other than just like, yeah, I know you, I've like seen you do well, whatever. But I'm wondering if there's value to being like, hey, we're always going to bring in, let's say 2 to 4 people who this is like their first or second pro tour. And our goal is less that like they're going to supply a ton of value to the team, and more that like we are going to lift them up and build them up and help get them through their first couple pro tours. And while we're doing so, also just like treat them like an equal testing member. And if they do have like new age weird ideas, you know, maybe our team gets like some fresh ideas that all of these like veterans wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, that'd be sick. And whenever I was part of a team and it was like, oh, hey, there's this kid who qualified, you know, kind of a friend of mine or whatever. Can we let him on the team? It was just always a no. You know, people were just like, oh, he's not the Hall of Fame. Like, I don't want him on our team. You know, it'll just like bring us down. It's wild.
Yeah. It all feels very short-sighted, because it's almost like, you know, I don't claim to be like a big sports bitch or whatever, but like, you know, I do know that like a significant part of it is like when you're drafting people for your team, you are drafting rookies who show promise, right? Like you are drafting people who are like new but promising, kind of in the hopes that like maybe they're going to be like surprisingly fucking insane at this. And we are going to have bet on like a really great horse and have a really awesome season because of it. And the same just doesn't feel like it happens in Magic.
No, you know what happens is that for my top 8s, when I was on a team, not a single person asked me if I wanted to test a matchup or if I wanted to go over stuff. It was, if I asked, people probably would. They would maybe feel a little bit obligated or whatever. But like maybe you get some pats on the back when you make top 8. But people are mostly absent until it's time to take like the winner's photo. And I just hate that shit so much. You know, it's like they are so not invested in your success until the point where it's like, oh, okay, I can kind of capitalize on this a little bit. And there is one person who I would say is more of a friend than like just a teammate, who did help in Bilbao. But like, even then it was, I think like after my top 8 match or whatever, it was like, oh, okay, like he's actually doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I don't know. I would just like to see someone in someone else's corner versus like, oh, okay, well they're winning, but they're not done winning, so I can't really take part in the photo op yet. So I should just go do my own thing.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's really short-sighted. It really feels like, I don't know. And I guess that is also just like a byproduct of these teams not feeling locked in with each other, is you're probably not that invested in any given teammate's future if you're just like, well, they're probably just going to be somewhere else at the next Pro Tour, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're probably just like, why would you care that much about like, oh, I want to make sure this person gets better and improves on a fundamental level if you don't feel like that is in turn like ultimately enriching the team?
I don't know, because you're a human being and they're a human being. Like,
sure.
I don't know.
There's the just like being a person part of it. But like, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking about like, if you are just so everything needs to generate value for me pilled, like I think you could easily just be like, well, I guess what I'm saying is I think the revolving door style of testing teams is really just like a detriment in like so many ways.
For sure. And so, yeah, I would try to solidify that. And the way to solidify that is to, I don't know, try and make sure that your homies are queued.
Yeah. Now, here's something I did notice from documenting the Pro Tour all weekend long. There were certainly a handful of teams, and there were teams that you could easily identify from like jerseys or whatever. But there were 331 competitors at this Pro Tour.
Yep.
And if I do all my math and I add up every team that I know about, every team that I could observe, I'm still not even at like half the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people just out there kind of like teamless, more or less. So what should those people be doing?
Well, I had two homies that were working with each other. It was like they're good friends, and it was both of their first Pro Tour, which was awesome. And then I was trying to help them out as much as possible, but they're both, grown ass men with adult lives and jobs and families and responsibilities and whatnot. So they didn't have a ton of time. And it just kind of is what it is. And I think that might just be the spot for a lot of folks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely part of it. There's just like a time commitment thing. But I imagine there's also a good number of people who want to be on a testing team and just feel like they don't have the resume, the clout, the connection, whatever like thing they need to get on one.
Yep.
So what if those people wanted to just make one?
They certainly could, but I think the problem is like, oh, we're going to make this team for the Pro Tour among like the stragglers. And how many of those folks do you think are going to be qualified for the next one? Is like your team goes poof immediately and you're just back to right where you started. So,
well, isn't that kind of the whole crux of what we're saying though, is like with teams like Sanctum, it is not 100% reliant on them all being qualified.
Well,
like
yes,
they are just a team innately.
I think Sanctum started with like, I believe folks who were qualified and then
for sure
and very good and likely to qualify again. And then they added people and they also kept it going around the year, like not just the 2 weeks leading up to a Pro Tour or anything, but I think that is just what everyone does. Like, I mean, not to pick on Paulo or whatever, but he was one of the people who would show up, 2 weeks before the Pro Tour and then just be like, okay, what cards are in the set? Like I haven't done anything Magic related since the last Pro Tour or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. Like not only, I'm not saying like he should have been helping other people. Like obviously he was busy during that time. Right. But like
right.
The fact that there is no communication whatsoever, like there is no, I mean, I'm sure it's different now. There are probably like team discords or whatever, but it's like, as soon as you are off the Pro Tour, you are probably getting booted out of the Discord. And I don't think that that's how it should work. I feel like people should still be providing input for when people are playing like RCQs and RCs and stuff. And I think that is really what Sanctum specifically did correctly. And they not only were able to, I don't know, like have a more cohesive team, but they sort of like ensured their own longevity by helping other people qualify in the off season.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's what I'm saying is like, okay, so you are qualified for a Pro Tour. You, for whatever reason, are struggling to get onto any of these testing teams. but you see the value in testing teams, and you do ultimately want to be on a testing team. So should you just start one, but you should start one with the intention of doing it kind of like Sanctum and being like, hey, this is going to be a team that I start and that I stay with. And like, I'm going to pick people who, you know, we have like a similarly aligned goal, and we are all going to stick with it and try and like grow and develop and really like make a name for ourselves in the testing team space.
Yeah. I mean, I would even just like axe that last part, the making a name for ourselves thing.
Sure.
Like, I think that's kind of the problem, is that each individual wants to make a name for themselves, and people care about whether or not the team succeeded when they're able to claim like our team had the best win rate, or our team won the Pro Tour, or put X people into top 8 or whatever, but they don't care about any other individual on the team. And so I think you remove success from it, or at least like that version of success. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's going to die again. Don't worry.
Oh no. A little choppy. It's
don't worry. It'll explode again. It'll be fixed by next week. Don't worry.
But yeah, your definition of success has to be whether or not you feel that folks on the team are improving. I think that is it. And just giving like an actual shit about that. And it should not matter. Like, Magic is fickle, right? And it is difficult to qualify because oftentimes there's only like 1 or 2 shots with like the RCs and the Spotlight Series, whatever. And even if your team is good and you have good players, you may not be qualified. Like, case in point, Nathan Stoyer, right? Like the talk about him was he was the best player in the world, and then he fell off. And just like, that's brutal, but that is the nature of it. And so you can't define success by we are doing well as a testing team, like we're having success at the highest level. It should be something else. But yeah, I agree. Like, if you are a person who thinks that you want to do this, keep an eye out for people who feel similarly. And I'm sure if you're just like, you know, on Magic Twitter or Magic Blue Sky or whatever, like, you will see plenty of posts who are just like, hey, I qualified. Does anyone have a team? And if you are paying attention to how those folks conduct themselves, you could probably make pretty estimated guess as to what their interest in that sort of thing would be. And it could even be like, one of my friends is qualified and I want to start a team of mostly unqualified people, but also my friend, and hopefully have my friend do well at the Pro Tour. And then we still are a team regardless of what happens after that.
All right, here's an idea. Here's an idea for you. The Nile and Gerry team.
No, I'm not doing it.
It's a great pause, warriors. Stop the video. Comment down below if you think the Nile and Gerry team is a great idea. Welcome back, pause warriors. Thank you for your input.
It's a great idea because the name is dope.
The name's so good.
But that is where it starts and ends, unfortunately.
The second you're out of town, I'm getting Patrick to say that this is a dope idea and that we should do it.
All right.
We'll see.
Live your life.
All right. We'll see.
I ain't going to stop you.
We'll see. I was saying, you know, we're sitting here saying all the ideas about how testing teams could be better. We could put our money where our mouth is, devise a team them up, team style.
I mean, honestly, if I ever found anyone like that, like if we did have a good group of people, I would just tell them to go to Sanctum. Like if they're actually invested in the same shit, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Why are there 2 of us, I guess? But
well, there probably just is a thing, right? Of like, your team can only be so big.
That's definitely true.
Or here's a radical idea. Is it possible that teams could be even bigger than people think teams can be? They just require like dedicated management at a certain point.
I mean, yeah, but you know, who is going to offer to volunteer their time? You know, like there have been a lot of harebrained schemes over the years for various testing teams. Like one of the things that happened multiple times because people kind of like buy into this, the idea that, well, we're not invested in each other's success and like that is bad for us. overall. What can we do to get each other invested in each other's success? And it's like, I don't know, care about the other person. And they're like, well, I'm not doing that. How about we do a forced prize split between the team members?
Horrible.
And then it's like, obviously the people who are good are just like, no.
Here's what I think testing teams need. And to any testing teams listening to this, I'm available for this job. I think testing teams need a manager the way that tons of teams, sports teams, esports teams have and utilize managers. Because the thing with testing teams is the people running them are also the people in them, like 100% of the time.
Yep.
Right. Like the people doing all of the logistical side of testing teams are also just the people in the testing teams. And that feels like a misuse, a misallocation of skills. Whereas if instead they were just like, hey, we are all competitors competing on the same team and we all want to like share knowledge and do all this stuff. But we are going to hire, someone like Nile to manage our team. And then I come in, I order
Nile,
the Airbnb.
You don't need another job. You really don't.
I love getting new jobs. Hold on, Jerry.
I order
the Airbnb. I manage all the groceries. I manage the distribution of information among the team members. And I schedule the meetings and like all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Make sure we have everything we need, all this stuff. Make sure run a tight ship. This is all stuff that can be done by a singular person.
Yes, but someone either has to volunteer their time or the team collectively has to pay for this service.
Yeah, which that's the thing though, is I think if you have someone managing the team, you can also afford to have more members because your members are no longer also dedicating their time and energy and resources to managing the team. So now it becomes a thing of, okay, well, let's say we have like a 20, 24 person team, which feels big and unwieldy unless someone is managing that. And now it's like, okay, so if we're going to keep someone for a week, we've got 24 people, each person puts up X amount of dollars to pay for the manager, call it team fees, whatever the fuck you want. Great. You've done it and now your team's better for it. I don't know. I'm here with radical ideas. Hit me up. NileJoanRivers@gmail.com.
So the problem with big teams is not necessarily the unwieldiness of it. I think part of it is, 24, even 20 people out of a 300 person pro tour. It's almost 10% of the pro tour. I don't like 10% of the people who play on the pro tour, let alone, want to hear what they have to say about what cards are good or whatever.
Well, you're not going to hear what they have to say. You're going to hear what I've told you has been said. And so you're not, the information is still going to come from a face you love.
Some of that information is going to be person to person. You are not facilitating, whatever.
I'm keeping you out of draft pods with the people on the team that you don't like. That's my job. Sure, and I clean the house. Sure, but the only clean testing house.
I'm still in a room with them for a week or whatever.
Sure. I understand that truly personality dynamics.
Even aside from
it's a minefield. Yeah.
Even aside from this, a lot of people don't want their team to be that big because the number is so high that it is a sizable portion of the pro tour. And it means that you are going to get paired against more teammates per pro tour. And that's more people who have roughly the same information that you do. At some point, there are diminishing returns. There's not necessarily a massive benefit to the 16th person and so on. There are definitely diminishing returns after that.
Sure. I still think testing teams need managers. That's my heart of heart truth.
I think someone needs to step up and do that. I think it's if there is veteran pro who was formerly the captain and now he wants to take his little Barney friend onto the testing team because they happen to qualify, and that person happens to be good at the managerial stuff, it's okay, well, maybe make them do that. Not make them, but hopefully they want to. They are getting something out of this. But you then try to focus your efforts to also try and help them. and make sure that they are prepared. So it doesn't feel like they are just spending all their time doing this managerial stuff and not getting anything out of it. So
sure.
That could work, but not, I mean, certainly a lot of these teams, like people are just losing thousands of dollars to go to these pro tours. Like they don't have money to like then pay a person on top too, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. It would not be free. It would not be free to do. But all I'm saying is if any testing teams are into radical ideas for how to improve their testing experience or just want their testing house to be nicer and neater, NileJoanRivers@gmail.com.
I have so much I could say. I'm just not going to say it. I'm good.
I love signing up for new jobs, Jerry. It's my favorite thing to do.
No, I was just going to talk about how I think that they're fine living in filth.
I think they think they're fine living in filth. I think if they let me show them a different world, I think they'd be like, oh shit. This is actually like cleared my head for thinking about magic.
Like, you're going to be like team mom, and then that's going to establish like bad habits, and then they're going to go home to like their wives and just, you know, continue that. It's bad.
I can't help if people are like children or whatever, you know.
What you should do is just be there with a ruler
and just slap them.
Yeah, pick up that booster wrapper.
Yeah, maybe that's the ticket. Yes, ma'am.
That's what they'll be saying. They'll be saying, yes, ma'am.
Well, so it sounds like making a testing team is hard. Getting on a testing team is hard. And running a testing team successfully is hard.
Certainly, but I don't know. No one has ever tried to do it the right way. Like it is always out of kind of convenience and like the people you enjoy being around. And I guess like certainly that is some benefit to it, but like it is difficult to achieve whatever you hope to achieve by playing Magic competitively when you are not doing everything in that interest, you know? But I do think that if you did have, say, like 10 people who were just genuinely interested in seeing the other 9 people on that team grow, it would probably not be that hard. You just have to find those people.
Yeah. This feels like a thing that we've kind of touched on a handful of times and we sort of come back to every once in a while, which is just the advantage that you like, the very real tangible advantage that you get in competitive Magic by just like socially networking, you know, like having friends is plus EV. Like it is good for you as a competitor in this game to socialize and be networked. You know, it's so funny because it's like so counter to the like stereotypes and cliches of like grindy competitive Magic players where there's, you know, seen as these like sad loners or whatever. Like truly the friendlier you are and the better you become at making those connections, the better it is for you competing.
True.
And that doesn't stop here.
It's just good life advice, honestly. You know, every, you know, job or not every, but like, you know, a lot of folks that have jobs from people that I know in the Magic space, like have come via nepotism to some degree. It's just like, oh, I knew this person, they were hiring, they thought of me, I got brought into this thing, now I do this. You know, it can do a lot to just, you know, not be a dickhead.
Yeah. I think that's really what it just comes down to, right? Like for all these people on all these teams that aren't Sanctum, if you are on one of these teams presently, just be nice to your teammates. Genuinely give a shit about not just their success, but also their experience, their overall journey as a Magic player and competitor and peer and opponent. You know, like be invested in all those things outside of the scope of your own team and livelihood. You know, just it's nice to give a shit about those things about another person, especially one that you're working with and for some amount of time living with.
But the exception is the one person you invited on the team specifically to bully, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that person you just got to bully, so, but they know that's the gig, so yeah, that's fine. Well, Jerry, do you have any other thoughts about testing teams before we wrap her up?
I nothing would make me happier than to see more groups pop up where I hear that they are functioning like Sanctum. for one reason or another, you know? And I hope that does happen. And certainly the two dudes that I talked to before this pro tour were also asking like similar questions about this, where it's like, how do we get on a team like that? How do we make one? You know, so it's possible. Like it could be happening now. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if you are trying to start one, good luck. If you're trying to get on one, good luck. If you're already on one and it's not Sanctum, tell them some ideas you have to improve the experience. And if you're on one and it is Sanctum, hire me to manage your next testing team house. I'll do it better. Well, Jerry, we are at one of our favorite segments, which is the Q&A section where people can send in questions for the podcast through any means, and we answer them. A lot of people also call this the Briar segment because Briar, one of our most dedicated listeners, always sends in a question for us, and we always appreciate it. So Briar's question of the week is, what's a good way to learn and get better at the split math for tournaments? My usual strategy has been having a friend who understands it tell me whether I should split or not in the final or second last round of Swiss, which is not ideal, and I'd like to be able to make those calls myself. I have a general understanding, but I never feel confident in my own split math.
I honestly don't know how to like teach or show someone without like a visual aid. Certainly when I made top 8 of my first PTQ, I was like, I went up, I looked at the standings, and I was kind of there with like my mouth open. I'm just like trying to parse it and make sense of it. Right. So like, I remember this, and I remember this guy that was just like, oh yeah, you're this person. Yeah, you can draw. And I'm just like, are you sure? And he's just like, yeah, 100%. And I'm just like, okay. And I recognize his name. So I was like, I kind of trust you, but like, I don't know why. And it would be helpful if you could explain. And he was just like, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, that didn't help. You know, I think he did explain it to me, but I was just too young, too dumb. And then I don't remember what happened afterwards, but like fast forward like a year later, and it's like, then I could do that math. I don't know. But basically I look at it like, say it's like an RCQ, right? It's like 5 rounds. Generally after round 3, there are 4 undefeateds, right? So I will typically look at how many people are effectively in contention for the top 8. And so it would be the 4 9-pointers are going to double draw. And then however many people, you know, X1 and 1 is typically live in this sort of event. But sometimes you do the math and it's like, okay, well, that means that there will be 7 X1 and 1s. So that means, a 4 and 2 can get in. But it is, just counting the amount of people, like how many are live. And it's like, well, 10 people are live for top 8. That means that 2 of the matches have to play. Yeah. And from there, it's like, say you're on the bubble, you're like the next person above. How much above are you in tiebreaker percentage? And you then have to become familiar a little bit with like how much tiebreakers can shift in the last round. And in a smaller event, they can shift by quite a bit. I think the range is something like 8-ish%, but that's like with the extremes happening. And yeah, a lot of it is just trial and error sometimes, you know, like I know plenty of people who I would have told you can do the tiebreaker math, and I've seen them drawn to 9th more than once. So
yeah, well, I think it is just kind of an experience thing. And I do think something you sort of touched on there is a big part of it, which is figuring out the things that you can like automatically rule out, you know, like if you are like, okay, well, the undefeateds, there's X amount of them, they all can for sure draw in. So that's X amount of spots gone, right? So now we're only really looking at this many spots. Yeah. So if I'm looking at this many spots and I see all these people with these records, then I know like the X2s just like don't have a chance. Or maybe it's the thing of like the X2s are possibly live, like 1 or 2 of them, whatever, you know, like you can quickly be like, okay, so these people are automatically in, these people are automatically out. Now we're looking at like a way smaller size of data.
Yep.
And now
you just simplify it.
Yeah. And now you just like keep simplifying. So like, okay, so if these groups of people all draw, are they safe to do so? Like, could these other groups of people just win out and overtake them, just on match points? Or is it dangerous because of like match points plus tiebreakers? Which sounds like a lot, but once you have simplified it down to like, these are the 6 to 10 people who are truly in contention, it's actually not that hard to just like sit there and be like, okay, so this could happen, this could happen, this could happen.
Yeah, the weird thing is that when it does power pairings, which is where it pairs like, 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4, pairs top down.
Mm-hmm.
It simplifies things a lot, but that does not always happen in Melee, for example, in the last round of Swiss. And that is like a floor rules thing where it's like the TO can set it specifically to pair like that in the last round, or they can just not check that box. And no one is more legal or illegal or whatever. So sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. And you could just look at it like, oh, okay, assuming that the top 4 are locked and what happens in their match literally doesn't matter, and 5 gets paired versus 6, etc., then these tables can draw and these tables have to play or whatever. But like, what happens if 5 gets paired to 10?
Right.
Well,
because there are weird things that happen that can be like really hard to figure out in the moment, where it's like, okay, so it makes sense that like 5 and 6 should play, but what you don't see is that they actually played like round 1 against each other.
Exactly.
So they actually can't get paired. So then it does like go, cascades down to like 5 is playing against 10 and like 6 is playing against 4. And now we're in this weird thing where 4 would have been able to draw, but now is playing this person who has to win out. So now like all this shit's fucky, like that stuff is just like hard. Like that stuff is just like, I don't know.
And then also if there's not an even number of undefeated people, like say after round 4, there are 3 3-0s. Yeah. So then 2 of them get to draw and then 1 has to play. If they win, they are knocking someone out of the event effectively. And if they lose, then they're adding another person into the possibility of people. And then in the final round, the people who drew in round 4 now have to get paired down against people who are 3 and 1. Assuming it does the top down thing, they should be paired against people who have high enough tiebreakers that they can draw. But say that doesn't happen, or the person is just unsure. The 3 and 1 person is like, I don't know if I can make it or not, and they play. Then you have to take that into account too. Or like the 3 and 1 person may also just concede. That happens a decent amount of the time too. So you can do the math, but pay attention to who's paired versus who if you can.
Yeah, my advice is if you're ever even a little unsure, just play your match. Just play it. Like, it's just, I would so rather play a match than like draw myself into 9th.
Like, I understand that mentality, but I've been in situations where it's like, I don't know, like I'm a big favorite. I'm like 70 or 80% to have all this go my way. I'm just recognizing that it's like non-zero that I do get 9th. If things break a little weird. And it's like, do I feel like I am 70 or 80% to win any given matchup? Probably not. Maybe I even know the matchup that I'm playing against. And I'm like, oh, I'm like a slight dog here too, But I've certainly had situations where I'm like, well, I'm a coin flip based on the math and I'm not a coin flip if we play. So I am playing. And then, you're taking that coin flip into your own hands.
Yeah. I love this because it feels like an extension of what I was talking about earlier about like an older, more disciplined style of thinking about competing in Magic versus like a, newer, less experienced style of thinking where you're like, if I'm like 70 or 80% on a draw, that's like really good odds. So I'll just take those odds and
I'm getting it
see
in
what
good.
happens. Yeah. Whereas I'm like, I would rather be the master of my own destiny on this one, even if it means I lose.
The difference is I know that if I'm playing a bunch of tournaments, I will have, 10 shots to take that chance. Yeah. And then I'm going to end up on the good side of it in a long term. But like in the short term, if this is like your first RC top 8 or, first Spotlight Series top 8 or Pro Tour top 8, I guess they don't draw in the Pro Tour anymore. But,
sure.
Something like a bigger event and you don't know if you're going to be here again. Like that's terrifying.
Yeah, totally. Well, Briar, I hope that answers your question. And that is all the time we have today. Thank you all very much for watching, listening, supporting. We really appreciate it. All of your Pause Warrior likes and comments and reposts all goes a long way. One of my favorites, like truly one of my favorite things about Vegas this year, because I spent so much time around the Pro Tour and the pro players, is how many pro players came up to me and told me that they listened to this podcast.
I don't believe you. I also need you to name names.
It was a bunch of them. And I mean, one that I told you about as soon as I heard it, because I was so excited, which was Melissa de Tora. That one, I was like, excuse me, you listen to our little show?
There are some people where flattered. It's like YouTube or Spotify should notify you. Like, hey, this person's doing your thing. They listen for like 30 minutes.
They really should. But I don't know. It really meant a lot to me because I really I give a lot of shits about competitive Magic, and I would not say that a bulk of what I do is like directly in service to competitive Magic. And because of that, like so much of my time is focused in other areas. And so like, I'm not like, despite knowing a bunch of people in the scene and a bunch of people in the scene knowing me, I am not really like in it, you know, like I am very rarely competing in tournaments. I've never had like big tournament finishes, you know, like I am closer to being a manager of a testing team than I am to being on a testing team, you know? So it meant a lot to hear all these people who are very ingrained in this be like, I really like you and Jerry's podcast. It's really cool. I'm like, oh shit, you know, that's sick. So thank you to everyone who stopped me in Vegas to tell me that they listen. And everyone who listens who didn't stop me in Vegas. We love you. But that is it. Good night. Goodbye. LOL, lots of love. Bye.